After 3 weeks of hanging out at the beach, I'm finally back. And it's not just me returning, but also the Nintendo Switch Online. In just the last week alone, Nintendo has added 4 new games to their online service, including Fatal Fury 2, Super Ninja Boy, the Western debut of Sutte Hakkun, and most recently, Ridge Racer 64. Yeah, that's genuinely great news. But are any of these games actually worth playing? To answer that question, I decided to flip through the pages of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Super Control, Next Generation, and more classic magazines to see what the critics said back when these games first came out. Oh, I sure hope you have your running shoes on because we're playing a game of catch-up in this super-sized episode of Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew.
戦いの中でしか生きられない奴がいる。スーパーファミコン画廊伝説2。
When Street Fighter II hit arcades in 1991, it wasn't just another beat-em-up cabinet. Oh no, it was a sea change for the entire industry. It led companies, big and small, to develop their own one-on-one fighters, trying their hardest to capitalize on the craze. Nobody epitomizes this ethos more than SNK, who rushed out the fun, but ultimately flawed Fatal Fury just 8 months after Capcom gave us Street Fighter II. 1 year later, they followed this up with Fatal Fury 2, a vastly improved sequel with more characters to choose from, improved graphics, and a tweaked combat system. It was a genuinely great fighter that console gamers couldn't wait to get their hands on. However, there was just one big problem. Very few people were willing to pay the $600 to own the Neo Geo console, and then shell out another $200 to buy Fatal Fury 2. I think we can all agree that those prices made owning the game financially prohibitive. But thankfully, there was a solution. Super NES owners would need to wait about a year and a half before they could buy a scaled-down version at a half-decent price. We already know that the critics loved Fatal Fury 2 in the arcades, but what did they think about the Super NES port? Let's find out. When it comes to Electronic Gaming Monthly, they loved the game. They gave it an average score of 8.25 out of 10, enough to make it their game of the month for May 1994. Resident Fake Ninja Sushi X couldn't wait to rave about it. One of the better games ported to the Super NES, Fatal Fury 2 is sure to keep all fighting fans busy, including yours truly. The graphics and playability are a great reproduction of the Neo Geo version. The sound could be a bit better, but the game doesn't suffer from it. To top it off, the boss code allows you to choose the other 4 characters, giving you even more guys to master. Fighting fans must check it out. Giving it a 9, Ed liked it even more. When I first heard about this game, I was filled with dread. I didn't think that Takara would be able to pull the translation off. I was wrong. This is one of the best fighting games around on the Super NES and shouldn't be missed. Only the music suffers a bit. It's a small price to pay for such an awesome game. Now, believe it or not, EGM's score of 8.25 out of 10 is actually the highest score of any English language magazine at the time. When you look at some of the other magazines that liked it, you saw that Total gave it a solid score of 78%, while Superplay went one tick higher and gave it a 79%. Every new beat-em-up is inevitably, and rightly, compared to Street Fighter 2. But Fatal Fury 2 falls short of the mark. If you're a hardline one-on-one combat aficionado, then the next thing you need to know is its place amongst the best in the Dead Dance region. It's quite fun with a little bit of depth, but it's nowhere near what you should expect. Even further down the scale, we see SNES Force give the sequel a 68%, while the notoriously generous GamePro couldn't muster up anything higher than a 3.5 out of 5. They explain that the numerous flaws shouldn't turn you off of the Fatal family forever. This game is just a step up from the previous Fatal Fury, but a couple of flights down from a great fighting game like Super Street Fighter 2. If you love the Fatal fighters and you want more bang for your brawlin' buck, then hold out and wait for Fatal Fury Special, which contains everything this game doesn't: speed, combos, and great graphics. Until then, scrape up the $3 and head out to rent this one. Now, if you're wondering what magazine gave Fatal Fury 2 the lowest scores, then the answer is Nintendo Power. Giving the fighter a low 3.1 out of 5, they liked the third dimension of fighting and the cool new characters and moves. Die-hard fans will eat it up. However, they complained that some character animations look incomplete, and that some special moves are particularly brutal to control. Yeah, as you can see, the reviews were all over the place. Honestly, I'm actually more on the side of Electronic Gaming Monthly, who was impressed by this quality port. I mean, yes, it's not the best fighting game on the Super NES, or even the best Fatal Fury game, but it's one of those sequels that laid a lot of groundwork for better SNK fighters. I say give it a chance on the Nintendo Switch Online. Perhaps it'll get you in the mood for the upcoming City of the Wolves coming this February.
Mega Shock Neo Geo. Naぜ戦うのか、誰のために戦うのか。伝説は繰り返す。画廊伝説2 SNK。
Long after the Super NES had given up the ghost in North America, Nintendo was still delivering fun 16-bit games like Sutte Hakkun to their Japanese audience. First released in 1997 as a Satellaview game, this cute little platformer took inspiration from The Lost Viking and Lemmings to create a non-violent puzzle game where our hero literally injects color into the world using his beak. You see, adding color to platforms will make them act in different ways, allowing you to traverse through increasingly complex stages and locate the shards to find the exit. It's not especially fast-paced, and the graphics aren't as stylish as other late-generation Nintendo releases, but there are more than 100 stages and lots of variety keeping you glued to this game. Had this been released in, say, the first half of the system's life, it likely would have done well all around the world. Sadly, due to it coming out in 1997, Sutte Hakkun was limited to Japan. That is, until now. After nearly 30 years, this hidden gem is finally available around the world. So, give it a play and see how far you can get in Sutte Hakkun. When Nintendo added Kung Fu Heroes back in 2019, there were probably a few people that hoped that it would eventually lead to the sequels being added to the Nintendo Switch Online. Now, 6 years later, your patience is paid off with the release of Super Ninja Boy, the Super NES sequel to both Little Ninja Brothers and of course Ninja Boy. Okay, sure, it sucks that we're skipping 4 installments to get to the 16-bit era. But counterpoint, it's also a lot of fun to see Ninja Boy and Chinaland on the Super NES for the very first time. In fact, this was only Culture Brain's second 16-bit game, released just after Super Baseball Simulator, which is already on the Nintendo Switch Online. Let's go ahead and see if the critics liked Super Ninja Boy more than they liked Kung Fu Heroes. Now, when it comes to this game, I thought it might make more sense to start at the bottom and work our way up. Why? Well, because the first thing that we need to do is talk about the one outlier, a magazine that went substantially lower than everybody else. That magazine was Super Control, a short-lived UK rag that ran between 1993 and 1994. They not only gave Super Ninja Boy one of the lowest scores of the year, but it's actually one of the lowest scores we've ever seen. That's right, an 11%. Oh dear! Anyone for a shite sandwich without the bread? Super Ninja Boy takes poor quality into another dimension, delving into the depths of the worst smelling game of all time, Home Alone. At first I thought Super Ninja Boy looked a bit like the Final Fantasy games, which I quite enjoyed. But Culture Brain has proved that it can release yet another turkey with this totally unplayable RPG action combo. Don't bother wasting 50 pounds on this game. I recommend you have a day out on the Isle of Wight instead. Now that we've taken care of Super Control, the next lowest score is from Video Games and Computer Entertainment, which takes us from 11% all the way up to a 5 out of 10. Clayton Walnum argued that if Super Ninja Boy has a weakness, it's the poor job done on the translation of the game's text from the original Japanese to English. Sometimes the dialogue between you and other characters makes no sense and contains misspellings. Awkward grammar, too, abounds, yielding such lines as, "I got excited at him." There really is little excuse for such poor translation in a product that the public is expected to pay $50 or more for. All in all, though, Super Ninja Boy is a reasonably good action role-playing game that, while it doesn't exactly break new ground, does combine the standard elements of other game genres to come up with something a little off the beaten track. Now, as we continue to climb the scale, you'll see that some critics actually enjoyed the game, giving it solid scores in the 70% range. Playtime, for example, went with a 72%, while Computer and Video Games had the highest score with a 78%. After several hours of playing, Super Ninja Boy still reminds me of the old Ys adventures. The viewpoint is the same, the basic idea is the same, and the same lame attempt at humor has been made. This is basically a wander around and talk to people in the hopes of finding clues game, but it's a pretty good one at that. The clues are all pretty simple, and the logic in the puzzle is pretty easy to crack. The sound isn't really much cop, but that's a fairly inconsequential point in an adventure game. All in all, a pretty fair RPG if you like that sort of thing. Look, I'm not going to try to convince you that Super Ninja Boy is one of the best hidden gems on the Super NES, but it does have its special charm, and it's nowhere near as bad as Super Control would have you believe, with an average of just 53%. This is an example of one outlier really bringing the score down.
Mega Shock Neo Geo!
狼たちに休息は許されないのか。伝説は繰り返す。画廊伝説2
SNK
When you hear the name Ridge Racer, you probably picture the PlayStation. While sure, it's certainly true that Namco's arcade racers appeared on a lot of PlayStation consoles. It also hasn't been afraid to cross the line and appear on systems as diverse as the Xbox 360 and the Nintendo 3DS. The first time this happened was all the way back in 2000 with the release of Ridge Racer 64. A port that not only featured tracks from both Ridge Racer and Ridge Racer Revolution, but also a handful of new levels called Renegade that were exclusive to the Nintendo 64. As we dig into the reviews, it'll be interesting to see how the critics react in a world where games like Rage Racer and Ridge Racer Type 4 already exist. As I so often like to do, let's go ahead and start with Electronic Gaming Monthly, who largely enjoyed the game, giving it an average score of 8 out of 10. Dean gave it the magazine's lowest score, a 7.5, arguing that for the most part, Nintendo did a great job condensing Revolution, Ridge Racer, and several new features into a neat N64 package. Personally, I'm not a fan of the trademark Ridge Racer handling. The drifting is so unnatural and forced it ruined the game for me. But if you're a fan, you'll like what Ridge Racer 64 has to offer. Don't count on 4-player being too fun though, it's slow. Also, when using the chase cam, the cars appear to vibrate on the road. Weird. John, on the other hand, gave the game the magazine's highest score, an 8.5. It took me a long time to get back into the Ridge Racer wafty control style, but after a day or so of adjustment, I really got into this. I'm in two minds as to whether it's actually the best racer on the N64, but it's pretty damn close. It doesn't look quite as nice as the PlayStation games, but it's fast, it offers a huge variety of cars and tracks, and it'll keep you going a lot longer than most similar titles on the system. As it turns out, EGM's 8 out of 10 was right in line with the bottom half of the review scores. Nintendo Power technically had the lowest score with a 7.9 out of 10, while Computer and Video Games went one tick higher with a 4 out of 5. That's the exact same score that we saw from Next Generation, who was quick to note the game's problems. The computer-controlled cars tend to cheat horribly, jumping in front and knocking into you faster than should be possible. And at times, the collision models are a bit off. However, the overall speed and action of the game, along with the variation of the drive and feel of the different cars, makes for a terrific racing experience. As racers go, it's easily among the best for the N64 and well worth it even for non-racing fans. Now, turning to the more positive reviews, we saw GamePro give Ridge Racer 64 an impressive 4.5 out of 5. Which is right in line with Australian magazine Hyper, who gave it a 90%. Put the incredible white-knuckle speed alongside the classic track design and the best arcade power slide mechanics we could hope for, and you've got yourself a winner. Finally, an arcade racing game N64 owners can be proud of. And as always, we had to wait for an in-house Nintendo production team to do it. Start hassling your local game shop for Ridge Racer 64 now. Now look, if you want an even higher score, then check out GameFan, who gave the Racer a 91%. That's the same score you saw out of N64 Magazine in the UK. However, the highest score for Ridge Racer 64 came from Insight Video Gaming, which went all the way up to a perfect 5 out of 5. They proclaimed that the greatest Nintendo racing game ever has arrived. California Speed? No. Ridge Racer 64? Yes. Jeez, what did San Francisco Rush do to Insight? It sounds like there's some drama bubbling just under the surface. Either way, Ridge Racer 64 was a hit with the critics, though there were a number of complaints levied against the game. It managed to average an impressive 87%, which definitely makes it one of the best reviewed racing games for the Nintendo 64.
We hear you lost really bad. Your driving skills are just so sad. We're here to offer you consolation. It shall never be so sadly Nathan.
Ridge Racer rated E with new fast tracks for crushingly competitive 4-player action, only on N64.
Hey, thanks for watching me break down these classic reviews. Also, thanks for being patient. My week-long vacation ended up being 17 days, which was way longer than I anticipated. The good news is I'm finally recharged and ready to tackle whatever 2025 has in store. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite Nintendo 64 racer? Is it Ridge Racer 64, or maybe one of those games that Insight completely glossed over in their review? Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back next week with a very special episode that I filmed at the beach. Plus reviews and even a look at the new Accolade Sports Collection. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,